mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 3, Episode 2 of HBO's Succession, entitled Mass in Time of War. I actually did some research on the title because I wasn't really sure what that meant based upon just watching the episode, which I can usually kind of glean it from watching. So I did some research on it, and essentially the title is based upon a performance piece that was written for a mass, the Catholic religious ceremony, and it's called Mass in Time of War. And I'm gonna read a little bit from the program notes. This performance piece was created by Joseph Haydn, and it was performed by the Boston Baroque, which, as far as I can tell, is like a orchestra that does, performances. That's what orchestras do, right? And I want to read a quote from the program notes of the Boston Baroque's performance of this mass, because I feel like it ties in with this episode really good. So it says, while he, referring to Joseph Haydn, did not often express political views, his title for this mass in the Time of War, as well as its music, reflect a sense of foreboding as Austria and its allies were about to face Napoleon. I mean, you couldn't nail the episode any better than that, right? Austrian forces preparing to face Napoleon. I mean, that's like really on the nose for this episode. That's the big kind of like set piece kind of. I wouldn't call it a set piece because it wasn't one scene, but that's like the main focus of this episode, right? Is all the kids deciding / preparing for a possible confrontation with Logan. Kendall is making his play at towards all of his siblings, kind of, like, hey, if you join us, if you join me, we will win. Like, Logan cannot win if you all join me. And they get this from multiple angles. There's a good scene where Roman calls Jerry and just tells her everything. And Jerry even agrees too, like, yeah, if you guys all team together, you can take Logan down. Now, you should join me. You should be on my side. But yes, that is true. So, like, they have this information coming from multiple angles that if they all just agree, they win. And I love how that is a sure thing and a slam dunk, as the episode is telling us. But it's not a slam dunk decision for them because they just don't want to face their father. And all of this, I think, is best not personified, but is best displayed. There's a scene, and it's my favorite line of the episode, and an episode that featured many great lines, both funny and just sharp. There's a moment where, after all of the siblings have decided that they're not going to join forces with Kendall asks, is it cowardice or avarice? Which is, basically saying, are you scared or are you greedy? And I love that line because I was wondering this too, because I'm like, what incentive do you have to not back Kendall? Like there's no reason to back Logan. If you back Kendall, you win. So what other reason besides just being scared of your father do you have to not back Kendall? So when Kendall asked that, I thought, man, what a great question. Is it wealth? I mean, is it greed or is it cowardice? And it's both. If you really think about it, it's both. So from the cowardice scale, right, we see that reflected in the donut scene. I think I felt like throughout the episode, Kendall was kind of winning them over. He was making great points. They seemed to be buying it, even though they didn't outwardly say it. Like, they'd outwardly say, Roman kept outwardly saying that he was there just as a spy on Logan's behalf. But you could tell from the moment that he showed up that Roman was thinking about it. He was interested. Shiv seemed to kind of like turn a corner during all of this. And they come out of Kendall's kid's bedroom, and Connor's out there like, Dad sent us donuts. And I love that because the donuts, something that, like, how could a donut be intimidating? It's like dessert, it's sweet, it's delicious. Like, why would something like that's completely opposite of Logan? Why would something like that be so intimidating? But it's like, I love how they were sitting there like not really eating the donuts because Roman said, I'm like 98% sure these aren't poison. Like, that's the coolest thing about it, is that would your dad send his kids poison donuts? Of course not. But like, they can't be 100% sure about Logan not sending them poison donuts. And the donuts serve as such an intimidation factor. It's like he's in the room, like the scene from season 1 where everyone got together to vote on to do the no confidence vote, and then Logan wouldn't leave the room even though he was supposed to. They couldn't make him leave, and he didn't. And it all went Logan's way because he was physically there as an intimidation factor. And the donuts were like there in his stead. Like, I can't get there, so I'm gonna send these intimidation donuts to let my kids know not to fuck with me. And it worked. And Kendall, Kendall goes off on him, and it, like you said, it is cowardice. Like they are afraid to go against their father, even with assurances that they will win, because they know he's so powerful, he's so cunning. Even if they win, like in the sense of like he can't survive as CEO with all of the kids up against him, they still don't win because they have such a powerful, vindictive, and cunning man who will be out to get them and will stop at nothing to do it. So the intimidation factors are off the charts here. So the cowardice angle, yes, absolutely, they are scared of him, period. And they allow themselves to be intimidated by a box of donuts. But avarice, I think, too, is at play here, because we see the greed when it comes to the dynamic of like, well, if we join you, Kendall, who holds what positions of power? And Kendall goes, well, obviously I'm going to be in charge. And then they have this huge problem with it. Shiv does too. And Shiv does mainly, actually. Shiv's like, I think it should be me. And I find that interesting because I'm like, Kendall's the one who made the play. He's the one who took the risk. He's the one who outed everything. And it's him that they need to be backing. Why would Shiv be in charge once this happens? Like, I feel like it's a foregone conclusion that it would be Kendall. But that seems to be one of the breaking points. He says he's going to be in charge. Roman doesn't like that. Shiv doesn't like that. And I don't understand how they thought that there would be anything else. But now that grappling for position, now that greed comes into play, right? Because they look at it like, okay, yes, we could certainly win if we back Kendall, but I'm not going to be in charge. Kendall is. Combine that with the intimidation factor, and they look at Logan and they go, well, if you back Logan, at least you still have a chance, because we know that Logan's going to step back at some point. So everything is still in play if you back Logan. But if you back Kendall, now you're, when I say everything is still in play, I mean you still have a shot at being in charge if you back Logan. But if you back Kendall, you don't. And it's the same position that I think Shiv was in that convinced her to come in the first place. When she was backing Logan, she felt like she was still in play. But once in play is in like in a chance to be in charge. But once Logan gave that to Jerry and that was off the table for Shiv, then Shiv looked at Kendall as an opportunity. Maybe I back Kendall and maybe I can be in charge if we went out on that side. And now Kendall comes back and says like, I'm going to be in charge. And then we look over at Logan and we look over at Jerry. And I think Logan says to her at some point that basically like he wants her to be his eyes and ears. Basically, he wants her to be in charge. And Jerry's just going to be in charge by, in name and title only. And, it's so interesting to me how this show plays like tug of war with power. And to see the chess pieces move back and forth and people's decisions having to change from moment to moment. Like, you might leave episode 1 thinking like Shiv's going to be anti-Logan, and now you leave episode 2 and she's right back where she started, because she still wants that opportunity to be in charge. So I love that cowardice or avarice line, because that is exactly what is stopping them. They have the certainty of winning, but they also lose the possibility of being in charge. Not even a certainty, a possibility of being in charge of everything. And that possibility alone, the greed of I can be on my own, out from under my father, and be a part of whatever Kendall's doing. The greed of no, but I still want to have a chance at being in charge, combined with the intimidation donuts, is enough to push everybody back toward Logan. And I thought that's what made this episode so great to me, was how it played with that power dynamic and how the kids respond to intimidation from their father, and how they respond to, this lust for more and more power. And it's like, it's not even about winning. It's about winning and, well, these are all forms of winning, but it's about not just about beating Logan. It's about beating Logan and also potentially becoming CEO. Like just beating Logan and having your own thing and having your own portion of that isn't enough. And I think that's what made this episode so special. And I loved when I read that in the program notes for this this performance by the Boston Baroque, the sense of foreboding as the kids contemplate whether or not they want to face their father, just kind of like really that concept like really stuck out with me. And I love that the Austria and its allies about to face Napoleon. You know, I think it's just so comparable, and I love that these titles you're putting some work into these titles, but you shouldn't be surprised. The caliber of writing on this show is fucking incredible. So of course they're gonna put some effort into what they call these episodes and how these titles relate to the content of the episode. So, I've actually mainly talked about what I really wanted to talk about and what I think came out of this episode, which was the Kendall's attempt to win his siblings over, and the donut scene and how that all plays into the dynamic that Logan has with the kids. But there are a couple of other things that I thought were interesting here too. So, I put this in my notes, and I kind of debated whether or not I wanted to make this point or go at it from this angle. But I mentioned in last week that it feels like this season is going to be like a back and forth. Like Logan's going to win around, Kendall's going to win around, Logan's going to win around, Kendall's going to win around. And Kendall won last week by scoring Lisa Arthur as his lawyer. And Logan won this week by getting all of the kids to back him. Like everybody's on Logan's side now. It's just Kendall and Lisa, and that's it. And everyone else is with Logan. And I'm like, Logan won this week, but it was from very little of his own actions. Like he didn't do too much to actually to win his kids over in a literal sense. The donuts was a play that happened to work out, but like maybe that doesn't work if his kids are less cowardly and less greedy. But he knows his kids. He probably knew that the donut ship was gonna fuck with them, and it did. But, he didn't do too much on his own to win. It was kind of like his kids' own self-doubt and own, like, their greed, but then also, like, their fright in going up against him. It was like their own issues that stopped them from joining with Kendall, and less of things that Logan was doing. But Logan also did make an interesting strong play to get Marcia back on his team. And I really love, that was one of my other favorite scenes, when they bring in Marcia to kind of like haggle out how she's going to continue to support Logan publicly. And they have this whole conversation. At the end of it, Marcia's just like, in exchange for me returning to the public eye, I need boop, 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 like kids taken care of, increase in revenue, yada, yada, yada. And then I love she says, Celeste will go over the details with you, her lawyer or whatever. And then she walks off, and in the background, you see her walk behind Logan. I think she puts her hands on his shoulder, and you see that visually. But in the foreground, you hear the lawyer, and she's like, these numbers are going to sound really big, but if you consider the situation, you'll find them to be reasonable. Like Marcia played that shit like a G, and I love how they wrote that so subtly, man. Like they could have just had Marcia come in and be like, boom, 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 and she did, but the fact that she just like one sentence, these are my demands, and walks off, and then leaves the lawyer to be like, yeah, I'm about to hit you with some real fucked up shit. But if you think about it, it's probably not that bad. And I'm like, man, that was some gangster shit. So I love that aspect. I love that scene with Marcia. I also love what's going on with Greg. Greg's trying to just stay out of it, right? He wants to be neutral. And I love the line where Greg says something like, I'm a little young to be in Congress so much. I thought that was a great line. But they use lawyers to intimidate Greg. Like Logan sends a lawyer, Kendall sends a lawyer, and then he goes to meet with his grandfather. His grandfather's like, I got you, man. This is going to be all right. And Greg's relieved, like he thinks he's going to find like an impartial lawyer to help him. And then the lawyer that they meet with essentially is like, yeah, priority number one is to make sure that you're okay. And Greg's like, yeah. He's like, priority number two is to like expose the capitalism and like some complicated sense. And Greg is like, oh, okay. And essentially, this lawyer is saying that they want they're not really interested in protecting Greg. They really just want they're interested in protecting him within the lens of like, if you can give us dirt on Waystar, we'll make sure that you're okay. So they're essentially propositioning him to be a mole or an informant or whatever kind of thing on Waystar. So like Greg's got snakes coming at him from every angle, but I like how Greg always seems to manage to find a way out. So I feel like Greg's gonna be okay, but. They're working Greg over pretty tough, but it's entertaining for sure. So I had a couple of thoughts I want to get out before I close. I feel like Shiv showing up at Rava's apartment. She was the first of the kids to get there. I feel like Shiv showing up at the same time as the Trojan horse that Stewie sent over is like some really on the nose foreshadowing. Like I feel like, but I don't know what direction. So like you guys, you may or may not know, but the Trojan horse essentially like it's a story from I think like Roman lore. Like you see it in what's the movie Troy with Brad Pitt. I remember the story and the terminology, but all I can really think of at the moment, because my thoughts are kind of jumbled, is that whoever they were fighting hid inside of this Trojan horse. The Trojan horse was presented as a gift. It was like a big giant structure or whatever, and it was big enough it could fit people in it, and they put their army inside the horse. The horse was presented as a gift. When the horse was brought in behind enemy lines, then they came out from inside the Trojan horse, killed everybody. So it's like basically like getting set up from the inside. And when Shiv arrived at the same time as the Trojan horse, I'm like, okay, so this is telling me that Shiv is a Trojan horse. She's gonna infiltrate someone's side, and it seemed like she was about to be with Kendall. But then after the donuts and everyone changed sides, it made me wonder, is Shiv now going to end up being like a Trojan horse on Logan's side? And I just feel like that's some really on-the-nose foreshadowing, to literally have a shot of Shiv standing next to a Trojan horse. Like if she ends up betraying someone in some way, I'm probably going to look at that like, that was a little bit too much. Like maybe have something where like maybe maybe Kendall and Shiv are having a conversation, and the Trojan horse that was sent is like blurry in the background or something like that. But to have her like almost like leaning up against it like, hey Kendall, like, okay, that's really on the nose. And then I like how Jerry kind of like used her newfound power to kind of just like power down all over Roman. Like Roman wants to present this executive board idea, right? And I love how Jerry says something like, she said like, that would dilute my potency. Like, okay, she's really taking on to this role. But all in all, great episode again. This show is just incredibly written for those who are willing to pay close enough attention to what's going on. And the main focus of this episode was, I think, the decision of the siblings on whether or not to back Kendall or to back Logan, and ultimately that cowardice or avarice that drove them back to Logan. And then also, not to a lesser extent, but like kind of associated with that, how Logan was able to use something as unintimidating as donuts to scare the shit out of his kids. A great writing by this team again on Succession. It's incredible. So I love this episode. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll try to respond to as many as I can, and I'll see you guys next week for episode 3. Peace.